We can start, and why don't you steer the meeting today, Paul?
Okay. Do we have anything in the agenda for today?
No, actually, this week's meetings or the daily syncs were mainly to gauge the status update towards
Yeah.
our. So
I didn't know if people had specific things they wanted to do, or maybe we can do like a Scrum type meeting for today if folks want to say what they're working on.
yeah, we can do that. Or rather than that, we can just have a look at the items that we list are blocking for the alpha. They are listed in the notes, so we can see what's the status, right?
Yeah, let's look at the milestone. So I'm going to drop the link into the chat. I can share my screen, but I need to clean some stuff up before I do that.
Yeah, let me share. I maybe need to take a break of a couple of minutes. There seems to be some alarm outside.
Okay. Yeah, check out the alarm.
Yep, I need to. It might be, for all I know, it will be a false alarm.
You back, Irfan?
Yeah, I think he's still away. And by the way, Paul, the Minikube version, there was one problem with the 1.11 version, right? I think that PR got merged in Minikube. I
Yep.
think, yeah, I think now we can use Minikube again back.
Okay.
We have
Um,
there's support for 1.11 in the 0.28 version of Minikube, which is their latest release, but there's
Um,
still an existing issue with profiles
oh,
uh,
yeah.
that we still, I think, need to address.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think that profiles issue needs to be addressed as a blocker for saying that we support deploying to Minikube. It's just something that people need to be aware of if they plan on using multiple profiles with 1.11, as far as I know. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I did want to talk about, it looks like Irfan's not going to be able to join us today. But I did want to talk about what kind of multi-cluster testing has been done. So I think Irfan was talking about having tested on 2 clusters, but without Minikube, and I don't think the Docker and Docker, the kubeadm Docker and Docker solution supports multiple clusters. Somebody please correct me if I'm wrong there.
So if I remember correctly, Irfan had said that he had tested with target clusters as old as 1.9. I don't happen to remember where he hosted Federation. Shashi, do you know anything about that? Or can you say what you've done there?
Yeah, I can talk a little. Actually, we hosted this federation in a DINT cluster, and then we had 2 clusters, old Minikube clusters, like running 1.9, and we joined them, and then we did an unmanaged E2E test about that. I
Okay.
think that worked pretty well. Yeah.
Okay, I see. So yeah, I think if we do something like that, that could work, and then you can use any other 1.9 or any other version of a Kubernetes cluster. But the reason I want to bring this up is because the user guide documents the walkthrough on testing the deployment of the Federation control plane,
Mm-hmm.
and it does require 2 clusters there. So I have not been able to verify that that still works.
Yeah, actually, past couple of days, I've been working on this right now. So I took not yet released a Minikube binary from a CI build, which merged that 1.11 related one issue was there in Minikube. So I think I picked that, and then I brought up a cluster with 1.11 in Minikube, and I was able to deploy the Federation control plane in that, and able to join the member clusters. So the only thing I didn't do was running E2E in this setup, in the new setup. That's it. But mostly the Federation control plane is running fine in there. I was actually trying out the DNS stuff over there. I found little problems in 1.11 because we migrated from kubeDNS to core DNS now by default. So some problems I was facing. So I was working through that. Yeah.
Okay. I do think that we should probably still have the user guide walk through at least a basic example. So I
Yeah.
think leaving that in there is okay. I do want to try and verify that, even if it means having 2 clusters kind of created in separate ways, maybe one with Minikube and one with local up cluster or kubeadm, Docker and Docker. But I do think that fixing the Minikube would really simplify people being able to test Federation. And since they do have support for 1.11, the profiles issue may not be such a big hurdle. But it will require re-releasing Minikube and all that. So I do feel like we should get that fixed at some point. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be
I
before
do
this alpha
believe.
release, but
Yeah, actually, there was one more issue related to profile that is also merged. It looked like that. Whatever you pointed, Ivan. So that is merged, I believe. And then the only thing is now it is not yet released version. That's it. So you pick up some CI build version. I think it should be good enough to run.
I ran into another issue when I was
Okay, okay.
using the latest version.
Oh, okay.
What I did is I built the latest master because somebody indicated that it was committed into the master. So
Okay.
I even built the latest Minikube, and I'm still running into a problem,
Okay.
which
Okay.
I can.
Actually, yeah, I have a different issue, but I was able to run 2 Minikube clusters. Uh, I ran into the issue because I needed a cluster with load balancer service support. So I was using a Metal LB, and that caused some issue with ARP pinging actually. So that's a different issue actually. It's not related to profile ideally. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's. I think it would be good if we reframe this discussion around like the GitHub milestone to make sure that we have a clear idea of what we think the remaining items are before we release the first alpha.
I posted the issues there that still exist as far as Minikube goes.
I'll share my screen and show the list. Let's go through that list and make sure we think it's complete. Can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one in this list is align federated cluster with cluster registry. That refers to the federated cluster resource should become namespace to match the cluster registry cluster resource. I know Maru's got a poll open for that one already.
That's been merged, actually.
Oh, is that merged?
Yeah, that should be done.
Because okay. So we can close that out. The image builds I've kept open until the Canary build is working again. Lindsay's got a poll for that. I suspect we'll have that working today. Then basic walkthrough and associated test script. I think this probably needs to stay open until the walkthrough is updated to reflect what's changed since the Cube Builder refactor. And Ivan, I think you were going to work on that, right?
Yes, I'm working on that. I was talking to Maru, I don't think we need an associated test script for it to release alpha. We can add it as a subsequent. Plus, we're sort of transitioning to rely on a later version of KubeBuilder as well as the latest Kubernetes version. So I don't want to code something up that's just going to change in the follow-on alpha release. I just don't want to hold up the release for that.
Well, I think we've got a test script that exercises close to what the walkthrough has at this point, right? Like
we have the deployment, but we don't have like exercising the example. And I thought the associated test script was some sort of way of validating and having a reproducible example that would work.
Yeah, that was the original intention. So I think that I do think this is pretty important to have for the first alpha release, in the sense that like we had agreed to it and as a group, and if there's some hurdle that makes it hard to implement the like example as a script, then maybe we can look at having a simplified version. For example, we could have a very simplified version of the example that we have now that just targets a single cluster, so that you can use it to just understand the mechanics without having to deploy another cluster.
Yeah, that makes sense. At that point, though, it's really no different than the unmanaged end-to-end tests that is done as part of like the development workflow. So the only issue I see with doing this is that we don't have a good way of testing with multiple clusters at the moment without
Right.
kind of running through some hoops and jumping through some hoops there. But I think having at least a user guide update and a development update makes sense. And then we can work on a test script that possibly deploys to one cluster. Again, I feel like it's no different than the unmanaged E2E test. So to have, it's really just a matter of like running go test against your setup. So I don't know that we need a script just to run against one cluster. But it would be valuable to at least run through the user guide, which is not necessarily what is done as part of E2E.
Okay, so we'll keep this open, and Ivan, maybe you and I can talk a little bit about that offline. The next one is renaming KubeNord. I believe there's a poll for this already.
Yeah, I just joined back, so I raised a poll. That renaming is simple. I did add a version also to KubeFed, and I think the versioning is something which ideally we should consider for all the binaries. I guess the controller binary and KubeFed both ideally should have similar or same version, right?
I'm sorry, which version do you mean? I had a mismatch with you.
Okay, so the one that is shared on your screen right now is just the rename KubeNord to KubeFed. That I have a pull. What I did also add into that is a version for KubeFed. Right now there is no version option in KubeFed, or I guess in controller manager also. Although I'm not sure about controller manager, but when we do release, we should ideally have some versioning scheme for our binaries, the binaries that are part of the release. So that's what I'm.
Oh, I see what you mean. You mean a version option that reports the version of the software, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, that sounds like something that we should have before alpha.
Yep. So you were there in the meeting day before yesterday, right? Paul?
Yeah. Yep, I was there.
Yeah. So we had this chat about what version we should give for KubeFed, because we are naming it, and to disambiguate with the previous V1 KubeFed, we ideally should have a version either incremental or some way different from the older ones. So if you have two binaries, they can be differentiated using the version option. So what I have done right now is, I mean, that discussion need not happen in the meeting. That can happen over the issue or the pull request also. What I have done is I have put in a version named v2.o.o-alpha.0. So, I mean, to me, it somehow sounds that this repo and this work that we are doing is 2.0 of or the second version of that Federation effort. So the binaries might also have a similar version.
That is an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, if there is a better option, I mean, I'm certainly open for that.
Yeah, so I wonder if that means that we ought to like disambiguate in the name, like kubefed-v2 for the binary name, so it's very clear that it's not the same kubefed.
Yeah, but it's not. To me, it doesn't sound like a good utility binary name then. I mean, I remember that discussion. This option was also put up, but somehow kubefed-v2 doesn't sound like a good name to be used on a command line.
Okay, yeah, I think that might be something that we should like discuss. Did we make a decision about how we were going to disambiguate the versioning? I don't seem to recall that we did.
Yeah, so I guess Quinton did raise this issue also, right? Which is labeled as alpha right now, which says that rename Q not to QFed in the list of the 3 issues last you were listing prior to this. Yeah, around that time when Quinton did raise it, we have had this discussion in the group, and the plausible suggestion was this, that we incrementally version the binary. The name could be same, but we incrementally version the binary. So to me, that sounds like a good idea. I don't remember whose suggestion was this, but to me, this sounds like a good option to go ahead with.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree. So here's the thing is that I think that might be, it might be very confusing to people that, like, if anybody has both binaries installed on the same system, it might be confusing to them. The other thing that I would be, that I think people might find confusing is if we say it's the first alpha release of Federation v2 and we call it 2.0.1. Like,
no, we don't call it 2.0.1. It's 2.0.0, and I guess that sort of is similar to the API version releases. So the APIs can go through. I mean, that too. What we are talking about is something like a major version, right?
yeah.
So and then major version can go through starting from alpha to beta to whatever. So
yeah, and for alphas in the past in the Kubernetes community, like what I've done in the past with Service Catalog is that the alpha versions were 0.0.x. Does that make sense? So like the first alpha version was 0.0.1.
Yeah, that isn't the case when you are starting from scratch, right? So if you look at what I meant was like API evolution. If you look at that, so for example, autoscaling API has a V2 also right now. So they started V2 with some new autoscaling API, and that V2 is alpha right now. They have a mature V1 which is already a GA version, and they have some 1.9 or something similar with the KTS release scheme also, right? So each new version can have alpha, then a beta, and then something else. That's my thought process. I mean, we can have something else also.
So this is more than just like the released versions, though. So if we are going to call this the version of these APIs to be V1 Alpha 1, it probably shouldn't have a version number that it starts with a 2. So we probably need to look at like the API version versus the release version, and those should line up. So like
Correct.
maybe that means that we should change things to V2 Alpha 1.
Something like this, yes. I mean, that sounds like a consistent scheme, versioning scheme across to me. That's what I have in mind.
Let's see. So all right.
So I've put two links in the chat window. That is what my suggestion is as of now. Like we should have maybe a version file or version get method, which is sort of a global. Right now, I did implement only for QFET, but that can be used across binaries, and that remains consistent for all of us whenever we do a release. And that's my suggestion. I mean, like we can have something different also.
Yeah, I mean, your suggestion makes sense to me, Irfan. I'm not sure yet about the versioning scheme, so let me think about that. But I agree that what you suggested in terms of like the implementation that you showed seems fine to me. What Kubernetes and other projects in the community do is load the specific version to be built from a Go flag. So you can set a Go flag that has basically key value pairs and use that to populate the actual version. So we can leverage the same thing. It's pretty close to what you're doing now with just a couple modifications from what you already showed. So we've got that issue. Let's see, what else do we need to put on here?
I guess when I was away, you guys did already talk about the documentation, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So I think, and images are already, I mean, there's some work already going on then. And yeah. I did not get a clear idea about the images. So currently, what happens is, or what I understand is that once a PR merge or post merge, there is a trigger which will build the images and push the images to a known image location in the Travis CI, right?
Yeah, that's right. There's a script that runs in Travis that does the image build and push to Quay.
Yeah. Is this either you or Lindsay, are you going to update this to be based out of a tag also? Like when you, rather than pushing each time, if it is not useful for CI, we don't need to have so many images there, right? Which,
Yeah, we will need to add support for building tagged versions to the CI flow.
yeah. So the best option might be that whatever version we decide that this is going to be, we tag that as a git. I mean, we put it as a git tag, and when we do that, that is a trigger to build the images and make a release. And this git information also is used in the version information. That's how the KTS also does it. So
Yeah.
the branch tag basically determines what version it is. And I have already put in a command. We can follow the similar scheme. And if you're building something which is like dirty, which is not necessarily a tagged version, then it can be appended with that particular information also, a git hash or something like that.
Okay, I think that captures
Yep.
that.
Yeah, and while you were writing this, it seems like we are building the image with name Federation-v2. And if we rename kubefnot to kubefed, we will have a consistent naming as kubefed-v2.
Yes.
But it is discouraged to have hyphens in the package names and all. Like we can always specify the output name of the binary, but if you build as default, it will build with the name of the package. So currently, which is kubefnot. But if we put the name of the package as kubefed-v2, I'm not sure that we are following the guidelines, or that works also. I've never seen a package named like that. I mean, when I say package, it means the Golang packages.
Yeah.
Complicated.
What if we called it kubefed2?
kubefed2. Yeah, that also sounds okay to me. Anything is fine. Somebody has to make a decision. The whole point is that, like, if you start brainstorming, there would be so many options and pros and cons.
Yeah, I would say let's Irfan, can you update your poll to rename it to kubefed2, and if we get some community feedback, we can rename it again.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
Rename that to kubefed2, and I will then make the version of that as 0.0.1-alpha.0. Sounds okay?
Yeah, and we'll then need to work to update to make the version driven off of like the Git SHA that you're building and so forth.
I can take that up also. Like
Okay.
that's what I thought I'll do next.
All right.
Okay. Okay, I guess this seems to complete the list, right?
Seems like it, yeah. Can anybody think of something that should be on this list but isn't?
Okay, cool.
All right. Are there things that people want to continue talking about in the remaining 20 minutes that we have for today?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. I think that's it for me too. Anybody else?
Yeah, nothing, Paul.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we all get 20 minutes back and we'll talk tomorrow then.
Sure. See you tomorrow.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay.